Now, imagine you're standing in a forest and you listen to all the sounds around you. You hear a wise old owl and crickets singing. And then you notice on a tree a painting. It's a pretty big painting, but it's quite hard to see, so you get near it. And then you realize there's a person in the painting staring at something. And next to that person is a bunny. And the bunny is up on a stool. It's a big golden stool with ornate drawings on it.
What does ornate mean?
Very carefully carved, pretty drawings. And you can't really make out the drawings, but they do look very beautiful. And there's little sparkles on it too. And you see that the rabbit and the person are both staring at something themselves. Then you look a little closer and you realize that the rabbit and the person are themselves staring at a painting. And you think to yourself, that's interesting. And then you realize standing next to you is a bunny on a stool. Not just in the painting, but right next to you. And you look over and that bunny and that stool is golden with ornate carvings and little sparkles. And you think, that wasn't there a minute ago. And then you look back at the painting and realize that the person in the painting is you. And then you think, how is that possible? And you turn around and look back behind you and realize you're in a painting and someone is staring at you. And that someone is you. But next to that person is no bunny. And then you become aware that you're not the person. You're actually the painting. And you look up and all around you and you see daylight shining through the trees, little warm sun rays shining through. And you actually feel pretty peaceful even though you've realized you're a painting. And it kind of gives you this freedom because then you know that you just get to be and you don't have to worry about anything. And everything is fine. There's nothing to be concerned about. There's no homework to do. There's no room to clean. Just you and your bunny. And for some reason, a golden stool. And that's okay. And the leaves fall and you can hear them. Everything is so quiet. Other than the owl and the crickets and other little peaceful noises. And you look up and you see the owl. And you're not sure. You think he might have winked at you. And then the owl looks at you and says, hi. And you almost jumped a little bit, if not for the fact that you felt very peaceful, because you just realized an owl talked to you. And then you came to the realization that since you're in a painting, just about anything could happen. And so you said, hi back, what's your name? And he said, Hoot. And you said, your name is Hoot? And he said, no, my name is Bob, I was hooting. Oh, I thought you said your name was Hoot. And Bob laughed, but it was a weird laugh because you've never heard an owl laugh. Quite boisterous, quite hefty, quite hearty, almost like a Santa Claus laugh, which really kind of threw you for a loop. And then you said, Bob, I really enjoy your laugh. Can you come down here? And he said, well, if I do, I might have to eat the rabbit. He said, well, no, not cool. He said, well, owls do eat rabbits. And you said, this is my painting, and owls do not eat rabbits. Instead, they eat acorns. And the owl's like, oh man, I always wondered what the squirrels did that for. And so he started eating acorns. Except then, the squirrels got mad at him and started chittering away. until that chittering became more clear to you and you could actually understand what they were saying. And they were saying, "Hey, owl, get off my lawn." The owl didn't like that, but then you had to explain to them that owls eat acorns. And they thought, that's odd. We do too, but we've never seen an owl eat acorns. And once you just explained that, they decided to let the owl come and join them for a nice acorn dinner. And they warmed up their acorns by putting them in one of the sunbeams until they were nice and warm. And they all sat down and had a nice acorn dinner. Then one of the acorns fell from the tree, landed right in the ground, and to your amazement started growing into another tree. As if years had passed, that tree just kept sprouting up. Up it went, and it was 20 feet tall, and then sprouted its own acorns. And that is how the forest growing. What you didn't realize, though, is that those trees were also alive. So as you started to walk around it, you noticed that the tree had one eye looking at you. It wasn't a creepy eye, it was a comforting eye. And you said, "Hey, tree." And it slowly said, "Hey, what's your name?" And you said, "My name is JJ." You said, "Well, it's nice to meet you, JJ." And you said, "Why do you talk so slow?" And he said, "Well, I'm a tree, and to grow very slowly. For some reason, I grew very fast." And you said, "Well, maybe because it's my painting." And he said, "Oh, well, that makes me a happy little tree." And then you moved on and saw some birds chirping. Eventually, those birds chirping became clearer to you, and you could even understand them. What you realized is they were just singing. Pretty much sounded like whistling most of the time. And you introduced yourself to the birds, and they were a little startled at first because they had never spoken to a human. But you guys got along great, and they even flew down and sat right on your shoulder. Although you did have to warn them not to poo on your shoulder. They seemed to like doing that. And so out of curiosity, you asked, "Why do birds poo on people?" And they said, "Well, it's fun." And you said, "I thought so. I thought that's why you did it." And they said, "No, we're just kidding. Sometimes we just have to go." Tony, the other day, over there, that's Tony. He couldn't hold it anymore, and he was flying midair. Plopped one right on ahead. And they said, "Why can you understand us, but no other humans can?" He said, "I don't know. I guess because it's my painting." And you started to move on, and the tree, and the birds, and the owl, and the squirrels, and the rabbit said, "What's a painting?" And you realized they didn't even know. You tried to explain it to them, but they just couldn't understand that, and eventually gave up and just said that you don't know either. You just think it's neat that you can talk. They agreed. But it was starting to get dark as the rays started to get a little more dim through the trees. You said, "Well, I should be going home. Do you mind if I come back?" And they said, "Yeah, you can do that. We don't mind at all. But where do you live?" And you said, "Well, I have a home. I just don't know if I can get to it because I'm in this, what do you call it? Painting. Maybe you can help." And the birds decided they would fly up high, high above the trees and look for a house, and you described what it looked like. And so they did, and they flew high up, high as they could. and they could see everything from many miles, lots of trees, lots of green hills, several rivers, some lakes, and way over in the distance, a tiny house with a little smokestack from a chimney. And it looked like more humans. The birds came back to report they saw the house and what looked like two more humans looking and maybe even yelling, but they couldn't hear them that far away. And you said, "Oh, I think that's my parents. They must be worried." So the birds decided, well, that's a long way and it would take you days to get there. How did you get here? And you said, "I don't know. I was standing in the forest looking at a painting, and then it seemed like I became the painting." And they said, "There's that word again. What is a painting?" And so you went back to where you started and you showed them what the painting was. "Oh, okay, we've seen this before. We didn't know that's what it was called. And I think we can help." So they walked you around to the back of the painting and said, "Now stand here and turn facing the other way with your back to the painting." And you did so. And then the rabbit grabbed his stool and came over and sat next to you. And the next thing you know, the painting itself started to move, and it moved toward you. And you weren't scared. Again, it felt good, and it felt warm, and it felt peaceful. But it just moved toward you, and you realized it was on your back, but then it just seemed to go right through, and you saw the frame of the painting around you. And the next thing you know, you were staring at the painting of yourself. And you looked around and you didn't see the owl or the squirrels or the bunny or the chair, other than in the painting, of course. And about a little tiny walk away was your house and your mom and dad calling your name. And so you turned to look at them and turned back, and the painting was gone. So you went home and told mom and dad about it, and they weren't sure if you were making that up or if it really happened. And so that night you had a good dinner, and you just felt this warm happiness, and you went to bed. And the next day you woke up, and there was an acorn in your bed.